Witness.
Yeah, I never, from that moment on, had any doubts or fears or worries or regrets. I didn't tell anybody, my mother, anybody, what had happened. When I came home from work Monday night, and at the supper table, I said, Ma, is there any place they're having a service tonight? She didn't swoon or fall off the chair. But she had been listening to WPCC. We preach Christ crucified, and the call they're supposed to represent. And it was a radio station of North Shore Congregational Church, where J.C. O'Hare was the pastor. Because O'Hare always used to, quite often would attend Brother Newell's services, where my mother and I, along with her, had often attended.
And where was he ministering? Newell? William R. Newell you're talking about?
Well, in different churches.
Oh, I see.
In fact, at that time, no church hardly would have him, so he'd come to Chicago periodically, and they'd rent a hall downtown, and what they call the Newell class, they sent notices and they all go down to hear him. And O'Hare had been a pastor of the church in Oak Park, Illinois, but just before that he had taken over as pastor of North Shore Congregational Church on the corner of Wilson Avenue and Sheridan Road there, 1011 Wilson Avenue. And they had their own station. That was the early days of radio.
Right.
So anyway, my mother said, yeah, they're having services up there every night this week, and Louis Talbot, he is the speaker. So I said, well, I think I'm going up there. You want to go along? So I can't remember whether she went or not, but I know I went every night that week. And Talbot had a great big chart, a dispensational and prophetic chart, and he was using that.
Oh, really?
His whole time to the ministry of the Word. So he took that position there at the Oak Park Church. But as I said, after he became pastor at Oak Park and was located in the Chicago area, he used to attend Brother Newell's meetings. And of course, at that time, the Schofield Bible had come out, you know. And I'm sure he got studying that because he was 100% that everybody should have the Schofield Bible.
Oh, I see.
And then he read a lot, I'm sure, too, from some of the men in England, and even those who perhaps we thought had gone a bit too far. He read what they had to write.
Like Bullinger, for instance?
Yeah, like
Welch.
Bullinger, plus Welch at that time was not quite on the scene. But Sir Robert Anderson, too.
Right.
His book, Silence of God, you know.
Yes.
O'Hare used to buy, everybody should have a copy of that. And then when O'Hare came to North Shore, he used to have Bible conferences there. And there were a lot of other fundamental preachers who were getting into dispensational truth.
Right.
He said 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, he closed his Bible. He said that fellow was right. The same exegesis that eliminates the tongues and the healings and all the other signs eliminates the water. And that's when he went back to Chicago. And I remember one Sunday, I looked in the bulletin and there's a little thing at the bottom that questioning whether water baptism God's program for His people today. Boy, I rushed home. I said to my mother, look, he's going to see the truth like we've seen it. That water baptism has no place in God's program today. As it was under Newell's-Bees that we saw that the water baptism had no more place in God's program than anything else.
So you're saying that Newell was teaching this doctrine?
Oh, yeah.
Teaching even before O'Hare had discovered it.
I heard him stand up last year. These Baptists, they make more of the water than they do of the blood of Christ. And in his first book on Romans, he said, no water there in Romans chapter 6. And anyway, that's when O'Hare took his stand about water, began more and more then to emphasize that. That was with all the other sciences eliminated and put out little booklets, which he's great at doing about it. And he fell into disfavor with all the other fundamentalists in Chicago.
So what brought you then to Indianapolis?
Well, there were some people here that they had been in a Baptist church and on the south side of Indianapolis, south side of Indianapolis here. And one of the men in that church, this Baptist church, that he worked for a lumber company here. And the man who owned that lumber company had relatives in Milwaukee who had come under Senator Baker's ministry there, and also he'd have O'Hare up there too, and distributing O'Hare's literature. And they sent him some O'Hare's literature. And this man was a Christian, and he had always had a bookshelf there with Christian literature, any of his employees that wanted to read it. And he put this literature of O'Hare's there. And this one man that was in this Baptist church, he pulled O'Hare's stuff down and he started reading it. And then he showed to some of the others in the church, say, read this fellow. He's way off on water baptism, but he's got a lot of good stuff in there. And they did right to O'Hare then. And he sent them a whole bunch of literature. And so there were some of them that got interested in it and really believed the message. And then this Baptist church that they had helped start, in fact, why they were calling a carpenter, and they told him that this literature was heretical, that it had contrary to that of the Baptist church, and they would have to give it up. And they said, well, if you can show us that it's wrong on Scripture, we'll gladly give it up. But no endeavor was made to do that. The pastor immediately wrote a letter of excommunication, and these, about a dozen of them, they were disfellowshipped. They were excommunicated and no longer considered members of that church. And so they were like sheep without a shepherd. And it happened at that time that Brother Stan, he had been pastoring in New Jersey, and he had resigned his pastorate there and become what they call field representative. for the worldwide grace testimony. That was it.
Who were some of the first charter members of the church?
Well, you always think not that he was most important, but there was a prominent dentist in town, Dr. Robert K. George. And he and his wife, Juanita, they were certainly in the group and became, I guess, he had come to some of those meetings that Sam, when he come down here, and meet with the group. He had attended some of them, and he saw the grace message. So he and his wife Juanita, only one of the three children was born then, just a little baby. The others followed soon thereafter. And then there was this Harley Paris, who was the one who got the literature in the lumber company that started it all. He and his wife, and they were the parents of Nellie Ramsey.
Okay.
Ramsey's
Sure.
parents. And then there was the couple named Dab, D-A-A-B, Charles and Dab and his wife. They became very active. And another couple, St. John's, Everett, St. John and Hazel, his wife. And there was the Powers family. He worked the same place that Charlie Dab did at Linkville